The pandemic, if you were one of the fortunate ones, just kind of put a lot of life on hold. And just before the pandemic really kicked off, my cousin had asked if I wanted to photograph her elopement in Iceland. Iceland has always been at the top of my bucket list, one of those places that feels so far removed from the world that just getting there seems beyond attainable. And then there's the cost of not just getting there, but getting around there and staying there. Then COVID hit. We'd reconvene every couple months, and time after time of rescheduling the elopement, travel restrictions, lockdowns, all of it, that kind of too good to be true tickle starts to work its way through your psyche, and you basically resign yourself to thinking that this was never meant to be. Until it was. Let's go to Iceland. Cute flight montage. Dallas to Minneapolis, layover, then Reykjavik. I'd only been across the Atlantic Ocean one time, and I vividly recall the advice to sleep on the plane if you can, because once you land, it's going to be early morning. And then once you land, don't sleep, or jet lag will find you. The thing is that as hard as I might try, I cannot sleep on planes. I cannot sleep sitting up. On the flight attendants commented that on our flight path, the sun would never really set. For a couple hours, it felt like you were watching the sunrise on a different planet. Got my stamp, collected my shit, found Erica and Shahab, got the rental car, and on the road to Reykjavik.
You're supposed to know the conversions.
I knew what it meant.
2 weeks sitting in that back seat listening to mom and dad bicker in the front.
30 is dying.
I loved it.
30 is 100, roughly, right?
It wasn't yet time to check in, so we wandered around downtown, and holy shit, was it cold. And I had just come from Dallas where it was 110, and yes, I understand that I'm in Iceland, but fuck.
He's gonna claw me and wow. Oh yeah? Is it that cutie?
That's your kitty.
those boots never made it back from Iceland. That first night, I tried to stay awake as long as possible, and I think I just started to pass out, and I was rudely awakened by a magnitude 5.2 earthquake, and about 2 hours later, another one, 4.7. I asked the guy at the front desk the next morning if he had felt them. He was like, yeah, you mean the thousands that we've been having recently? Oh yeah, an eruption's coming. It actually did 3 days later. We Tetrised the shit out of our rental car, and then we got some breakfast. I'm so glad I'm recording.
Where was for a pina class?
On paper, Iceland is relatively small, and while it's true that you can get from A to B in just a few hours, there's only one road, 0 shortcuts. And there's so much to see that we barely scratched the surface over the 2 weeks we were there. We didn't even make it to the central part, the northern coast, or the eastern coast. I've been to some pretty stunning places in my time. I grew up on an island in the Pacific Northwest, so I was spoiled in that regard. But this is the first place I've been outside of the Pacific Northwest that I felt like I belonged. Are there other places that look like this? Sure. But also no, not really. Miles and miles and not a soul in sight, just a shitload of sheep. Made it to our next hotel, and I'm not going to try to pronounce most of the words in this video, so they're just going to pop up on the screen. This one seems pretty straightforward, but I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Hotel... We would say geyser, but it's Geysir or something. I apologize. Shit. The hotel was unreal, though. We didn't actually really have a solid plan of where we were going to photograph the two of them, other than the actual ceremony location days later. I'd made a rough atlas of locations that we could hit as we passed them, but basically we just winged it. Now, this is really my first experience with Instagram versus reality. There's so much Iceland to see in such a relatively short window of the year for the average tourist to see it. Every place we went, we were battling everyone else, jockeying for some sliver of space to get our photos. I'm kind of used to that, but the strip seemed a little different. The one thing I really appreciated about Iceland was how much they actually care for their environment. There was no straying from the pathways, didn't see any litter, and I really appreciated that how few places there were for assholes with drones to just fuck up everybody else's experience. From the waterfall, we could see on the map that just a little bit further up the road was this lake at the base of the mountains. But when the sign says 4-wheel drive recommended, they're not fucking around. We stopped at the river crossing because we were not making it. Normally, I'm all film, and these videos are all film, but shooting everything for Erica and Shahab on film would have been too cost prohibitive. So I might sneak in a couple digital frames here and there.
Acting like they're not being funny, right? But they are being funny.
I genuinely don't know if there is a corner of Iceland that is not inhabited by horses or sheep. Iceland has a population of like 350,000 people, but 800,000 sheep and like 80,000 Icelandic horses. And the Icelandic people are very quick to point out that they are not ponies. Do not call them ponies. They may be small, but they are not ponies. But apparently they're pretty delicious because we saw horse tartare on the menu. Fucking sick. But not these guys. These are my friends. It's hard to go to a place and not think that you should be able to experience it without other people getting in your way. And I know how entitled that sounds, but ultimately, everybody should be able to experience places like this. So much so that we saw 2 different weddings in crowded locations just like this. Just the officiant and the couple. We were all their guests.
We're practicing.
Growing up, we were told that if we drank the water out of the lake that we lived on, that we would get beaver fever, also known as giardia. Apparently no one ever told Erica.
Best water I've ever had.
the best shits you ever had too.
We saw another sign for a waterfall, and you get there and it's kind of like you have to wait in line for a ride. You can peer through the crack in the rock face and you can hear the roar of the water and see the stream coming from whatever is behind it. But holy shit, when you step inside. I was not dressed for this shit, so it was a very long, very moist walk back to the car.
There was a vacation.
It's gonna require a signature.
The other thing you see frequently all over Iceland, and oddly enough in some of the least populated corners, are these little white churches with red roofs. Actually, many of the houses and homesteads in the rural parts of Iceland share the same palette. White and red. Erica had a tour guide book and was determined to find the church on the cover. Problem is, they all look the same. This one, however, came with the dog.
Oh, hello. Hi, Icelandic dog. What are you doing? Hi, bud. Hi.
According to the University of Iceland, 62% of Icelandic people believe in what is referred to as the hidden people. Think of them like elves or fairies who live in nature but can make themselves be visible at will. And then there are those Icelandic entrepreneurs and gullible foreigners. Fucking smells like sheep shit. One of the spots we knew we had to photograph at was the Black Sand Beach just outside Vik, or Vik. So many of the photos I saw of this place before I came were so dark and moody and just surreal. We were days into our trip and we were blown away that we hadn't been rained on once. So instead we played in the sun. Next morning, we packed up, got on the road to Selfoss. Probably said that wrong too. You see so many things just staring out the backseat window that it's really tough to not be that person on a road trip that's got to piss like every 15 minutes or take photos. But thankfully, my company was just as antsy to see everything that Iceland had to offer, even if it turned out to be nothing at all. This is one of those places that you might see photos of and somehow Whoever took the photo either had the greatest dumb luck in the world because not a single soul was there to wander into their frame, or they got there hours before sunrise. And in the summer, which it was, there's like 17 hours of sunlight, so that's not us. Walk to the top, they said. Fuck. God damn it. Oh my God. Silver lining was that since it was such a bitch to get to the top, you didn't really have to compete with anyone. Just silently judge the people on your way down who were making it look easy on their way up. It had one hell of a view, though. Made it to our cabins in Selfoss. Iceland makes some pretty goddamn good beer. Whiskey, not so much. It was so tranquil until the 5 Europeans who shared the other half of my cabin arrived and partied until 2 a.m. The stereotypes of hard-partying Europeans who like have a cigarette and chocolate bar for breakfast is dead on. And they were up and gone before my alarm went off at 7. Had breakfast and made our way back on the road, this time to, I'm gonna say it wrong, Jublansonder for the wedding. From a travel perspective, the great thing about making your way out of Reykjavik and surrounding areas, again, is that typically the tourists and tour buses don't come this far. It's just you and the sheep. Found another one of those churches. We didn't see a house for miles, but clearly people come here and utilize this space. I mean, the grass had just been mowed. Since there's generally one road to get from one point in Iceland to another point, we found that some of these roads literally go up and over the mountains. One thing I was actually kind of dying to see was Kirkjufell Mountain. Didn't pronounce it right. Also known as the North of the Wall Game of Thrones mountain. We stopped in this little town to grab some beer, and Shahab mentioned that he thought that the very non-Game of Thrones looking mountain to our immediate left was the Game of Thrones mountain. We disagreed. It was. You could drive right by it, not even see it, except for this one little vantage point, a little more than a narrow pathway, overtaken by photographers and their tripods. Which, great. Glad you brought your tripod, but no one else can get a shot because your ass is hogging up the only place that you can get a photo. The beautiful karma was that, much like the earlier waterfall wedding that we witnessed, a couple decided to have their photos taken right in the middle of the frame.
My dress is going to be trashed. 100%.
Now, was it a dick thing for them to do? 100%. At least ask or let people know that you're going to be in their shot for like 30 seconds. But was it a dick thing for a bunch of photographers to set up all their shit and not let anyone else squeeze in for a shot, including myself? Absolutely. The tourist loved seeing it, though. I learned some new phrases on this trip. I know I'm mispronouncing the two German phrases, and I'm pretty sure the Icelandic phrase I'd heard a few times wasn't "fuck a good fish." Or maybe it was. I also probably encouraged myself to continue saying it because I didn't know what they were saying. Neither did Shahab.
100%.
Totally trash. So trash.
Fuck a good fish.
Fuck a good fish.
Seeing this Arctic fox was almost kind of spiritual, if that's your thing. If anything, this was my hidden people of Iceland. Made it to our little cabins in Arnistapi. This was about 11 p.m. Shahab's best friend and best man, Nikita, had flown in from Vienna. And after a 4-hour drive from the airport and his airline losing his luggage, we all met for breakfast the next morning.
Even though I just drove to the field already.
He drives into the ocean. This doesn't look right. I don't know.
And I was like, okay, they send me cottage number 12 or something, so let's put it into the navigation.
I was actually secretly shitting my pants because we hadn't had a single day of rain the entire trip until today, wedding day. And I know some people think that rain on your wedding day is good luck, but it's not for the photographer. But the sun did come out after all.
Are you afraid of heights too?
No, the boats. I mean, the boat. Look at how it shakes. The current is much stronger than this. I'm enjoying the.
take my photo. Skull. Skull. Skull.
Is this the aquavit?
No, that's I don't remember.
Yeah, some of his education around the world, so I just followed him.
Since I photographed my first wedding in 2007, I've photographed over 100 weddings. And in that time, I've never been a guest at a wedding until this year. Also, I've never been to a bachelor party, so getting semi-drunk with Shahab and Nikita in the middle of the day, hours before his wedding, was the best thing I could have hoped for.
Bedankte Scheiße.
That's actually what we drank. We went.
Cheers.
Skull.
Skull.
Oh, that's nice. Du Hurensohn.
Horizon.
Skull.
Skull.
Oh.
It's like dessert.
Yeah. You can always see the picture. The door of a closet. Like the closet is locked. No, there must be something inside.
You broke it up?
Yeah, I broke it up.
Those are street signs, actually. They display the location of scattered farms and homesteads in the rural parts of Iceland. A weird little thing about this trip was that everywhere I looked, I kept seeing what I thought were filming locations from The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I even Googled all the locations before I left the States. Fun fact for you Walter Mitty fans, that little town right there is where he jumped in the helicopter as Kristen Wiig was singing Space Oddity. It was about a 3-hour ferry ride to the northern fjords. I normally do all right on boats, but shit. One of the places we wanted to hit on the way to our next destination was the Red Sand Beach. Not even going to pronounce the name. I've driven on some sketchy roads, the kind of roads that really make you clench your cheeks, but Iceland does not fuck around. I mean, it was stunning, but we weren't necessarily paying attention to the tides. The last stop before the next hotel were the Latrabjarg Cliffs. I might have pronounced that correctly. Allegedly home to millions of birds, most notably puffins. We wouldn't find out for a few more days that puffins actually burrow into the cliff when the weather's bad, like it was when we got there. Soaked to the bones with 0 puffins. We crashed at this awesome little hotel and woke up to some gorgeous Icelandic weather before heading out to Flateyri. That sounds like I said it right. Most places in Iceland, you stop, shops, hotels, restaurants, you can pick up maps of the island. Most of them have your run-of-the-mill touristy shit, but some of them will have hot spring pools, and most are just scattered on the side of the road, like this one. It was pretty surreal to be sitting in an Icelandic outdoor, naturally fed, naturally warmed swimming pool, floating next to people from Italy, Britain, a couple little kids with the strongest Scottish accent, and a family we met from Tacoma, Washington.
Don't do that.
Why?
Beep. To get too low. Now they can't see the sign.
No, they don't know what this is.
Iceland presented a few problems for me. Most notably was how goddamn wet I got on the second half of this trip. Normally I wouldn't care, but my film cared a lot. I only took one frame here. A massive silver lining to visiting a place like this is that it's so far removed from the bulk of where the tourists congregate that there was barely anybody here. One of the other problems that Iceland presented to me was that the entire island is so goddamn gorgeous that I struggle to capture it. You're in a part of the world that relatively very few people visit, that's so harsh and so demanding that very few people live here, but also has a natural beauty that's almost beyond description. The entire trip, I would catch myself making noises in the back seat because I'd see something and I'd want to stop. We'd drive a few miles and I'd start making those noises again. But then when I would decide that this is what I would want to dedicate a frame of film to, I would often look through my viewfinder and just not press the shutter. I couldn't create better than what I was sharing the moment with. This was also the first time in the 2-week trip that we collectively had time to just be. We didn't have to get up the next morning and pack our shit. We were able to experience a place on our own time and just soak it all in. Once we got settled, we each went on our own little walks around town. Generally speaking, being alone with my thoughts is not always the best place for me to find myself. Started thinking about how I'd probably never see this place again. I'd never be on this street or in this town ever again. And about how there was supposed to be somebody on this trip with me and they're not here. up on an island myself. Fuck, Iceland has some pretty good seafood. We went to this communal style dinner in this longhouse in Fjords. Doesn't sound right. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it, but it's called this. Cool. It was fucking cool. This was around 11 p.m. The next day we went whale watching, something I'd never actually done because growing up on an island in the Pacific Northwest, you don't really need to go whale watching. You just see the whales. You were at the mercy of the whales, however, and the guide who claims to know exactly where they are and when they'll be there. The sea was surprisingly calm and eerily quiet, so a boat full of tourists just sat in silence, waiting. I've only ever seen a whale this close once before, and like the fox earlier, it was another one of those borderline spiritual experiences. There ended up being 2 humpbacks that we would chase from one to another. It was our final night in Flattieri, and as it just so happened, pretty sure the size of the town doubled and met in this one bar that we happened to find ourselves in because the Icelandic equivalent of whoever won American Idol just happened to be playing this bar this very night. She was awesome. This is almost midnight.
I don't need this one.
As a photographer, Iceland is an absolute slice of heaven. The problem is you cannot help but see countless photographs of Iceland and not think that your pictures will look any different. I just have to keep telling myself that I'm not trying to take the same hyper-stylized, oversaturated, hyper brown, trendy photographs that will give me some sort of vanity likes on Instagram. I'm taking this photo just because I fucking want to. It's on film. I only have a limited number of rolls of film, and the stock I'm shooting will never look like the kind of photos I just referenced. But then you get your film back, and it's hard not to look at yours and mentally compare it to the other photo that I just shit all over and think, Yeah, theirs was better. When I'm photographing my son, I've had to tell myself to put the camera down because it's distracting me from the moment. Yeah, a photograph of that moment would be nice to have and look back on, but I'm cheating myself out of experiencing the present. Iceland is the same way. We had traversed half the damn island over 2 weeks, and I was so consumed with the thought of trying to capture it all on film and record it for this video that I was seriously doubting if I was able to value my time here the way that I should have. So I decided to stop taking photographs and decided to experience it with my family.
You'll learn more about Jeannie Chance in this.
This was it. Last day. And do you even go to Iceland if you don't go to the Blue Lagoon? But it's not really what you think it would be. It's actually supplied by water from the nearby geothermal power station. But goddamn, does it make your skin feel good.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Do it again.
Oh, there he is.
Must be nice to be gallivanting around all the time, or something like that.
Bitch.
Oddly enough, met this sassy gentleman who turned out to be the flight attendant on my flight from Reykjavik to JFK the next morning. And he sure did get me liquored up for free the entire flight. I will say one of the highlights of the entire trip was getting to see Greenland.